3 million refugees in 3 weeks. It's the biggest migration crisis Europe has seen since the Second World War, and yet...
What we have seen so far is an unprecedented solidarity shown by EU citizens. It's really amazing. Also solidarity shown by the officials, the border guards, the police. They are also working extra time without payment.
What a difference 7 years makes. In the summer of 2015, the war in Syria sparked a huge influx of refugees into the EU. Germany opened up its borders, setting off a mass movement of people across the continent. Other EU governments responded with barbed wire fences and angry rhetoric. The ensuing crisis nearly broke the European Union. Fast forward to 2020, and even the most migrant-skeptical member states have unanimously approved a measure granting Ukrainian refugees the blanket right to stay and work throughout the EU. There were several factors at play here. Certainly an element of Islamophobia in 2015, when the refugees were mostly men from Syria, Iraq and Afghanistan. Today, the refugees are Ukrainians, people who share with their hosts in Poland or other Eastern European member states many cultural, linguistic and religious roots. But there's something else. It's almost as if, in the face of a very real threat of conflict, the EU has suddenly remembered what it was created to do. Amid the ruins of war-torn Europe, a French foreign minister with a German surname had an idea.
Monsieur Schumann's immediate aim is to thin out economic boundaries between nations.
The Schuman Declaration proposed putting the coal and steel industries of France and Germany under a single authority. The aim was to bind the economies of Europe together so that war would become effectively impossible.
Réalisation concrète, créant d'abord une solidarité de fait.
Schuman called it de facto solidarity. It was the start of the European project.
I was born 55 after the Second World War as a Western European, Western German, post-war child. And my whole life was strongly influenced by a message my parents passed to their children. Growing up in very poor times, turbulent times, and as young people facing a war. And therefore we are pro-Europeans, we are in favor of cross-border cooperation socially, politically, culturally, to avoid that countries and nations in Europe fall back into these times.
The founding mission of the European Union was peace through prosperity. But somewhere along the road, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, after the end of history, the EU's central purpose as a peace project seemed outdated. Russia's attack on Ukraine has changed all that.
It's a defining moment in which the European Union wakes up to the dangerous world it's in, and particularly to the fact that Russia is now a revanchist great power to your east, and the United States may no longer be your security guarantor to your west. So people are now facing up to the fact that the European Union has to be a three-dimensional power, not just economic and cultural, but also military.
Over the past decade, Russia has been adept at exploiting Europe's divisions, supporting Eurosceptic parties, particularly on the right, politicians who flaunted their appreciation of Vladimir Putin as a badge of dissent against Brussels. That cozy symbiosis seems to have evaporated almost overnight. When Matteo Salvini of the far-right Lega party visited the Polish-Ukrainian border last week, the local mayor publicly shamed him with a copy of his own Putin t-shirt. Yesterday, the prime ministers of Poland, Slovenia and the Czech Republic, 3 countries that have in recent years pushed back against closer EU integration, travelled by train to war-torn Kiev. They brought with them a message of de facto solidarity, of the kind dreamed of by the EU's founding fathers. It was a powerful moment. But this union of 27 states with often divergent governments, priorities and values remains structurally prone to paralysis.
The power of the European Union, which is economically enormous and politically very poor, because we have this principle of unanimity, and if one member state out of the 27 member states of the European Union disagrees and put a veto, the European Union is paralyzed.
Because the divisions that Russia, in fact, has been able to exploit quite successfully over the past 10 years will not have magically disappeared in the past 3 weeks.
No, for sure not. And therefore, I repeat, the answer should be more united action, and I'm relatively optimistic that all the member states of the European Union have understood that this is the need of our time.
The current unity in the EU extends beyond a warm welcome for refugees. On foreign policy, on defence, on energy, Europe seems to be speaking almost with one voice. But is it a moment or a turning point?